A big hit at a recent garden party this last September was our pumpkin totem pole. Now, if you'll recall, our garden party was a kickoff 20th anniversary celebration for the show, and the totem pole was a favorite by many of the guests. They would have their picture made by it and just intrigued on how it was done. Now, the idea came from a couple of our OBGA volunteer ambassadors, Larry Burdett and Teresa Thomas, who actually got the idea from Nature Crafts book by Johnson and Pearson from Oxmoor House Publishing in Birmingham, Alabama. Now, as you can see now, the pumpkin totem pole the heat's kind of taking its toll on it. Back 4 or 5 weeks ago it was perfect, but again, this was done pretty early, and so it's starting to kind of shrink a little bit, and it's perfect then. There's plenty of time for you to still do it for Halloween and upcoming Thanksgiving. But basically how it was done is we used a T-post, a T-bar, that was driven into the ground using a T-post driver, probably 8–10 inches into the ground. And that's really sturdy enough, but what we found out using the pumpkins, ours was a little bit taller than the T-post. So with it shrinking here, you can actually see how it was constructed a little bit better. They then used a PVC pipe with 1.5 inch inside diameter that slit just right over the T-post perfectly, and that helped extend the height a little bit. Then they took 7 pumpkins, and the pumpkins were carved just like you traditionally would any pumpkin, just by taking the inside out. The only thing here, you didn't really have to save the caps. They put the biggest pumpkin on the bottom, just slid it right over. And one thing I want to bring to your attention is they didn't carve it quite as much because it actually has a lot of weight from the other pumpkins on it, so you don't want to carve it too much or it can't support the other ones. Then they used straw in between each pumpkin to help level it, and even decorated with straw inside. And then up to the top, they used a little bit more straw for hair, and then attached a hat with some nails onto the top pumpkin. And again, it was a great idea. Now, the one thing I would caution you though is if you're going to use a straw, you really shouldn't put any candles inside the pumpkins because obviously there's a fire safety there. If you're going to use candles instead, I would just make sure you cut the pumpkins pretty level so they'll balance on top of each other, and that way you won't have the extra straw for any kind of safety hazard. But I think it's a great idea, it's easy to do, and it's something I think your kids would definitely love, and I know the neighbors would enjoy seeing it in the landscape. And these cooler temperatures coming up now, between now and Thanksgiving, should be perfect for your pumpkin totem pole in your own landscape.